If you're reading this, hit subscribe now because what I'm about to tell you sounds like fiction, but it happened to me, and it started the day I told a group of smug men in suits that I wouldn't bow down to their so-called Homeowners Association, not knowing they'd try to send fake cops to my door to scare me into submission. But the real twist was that their whole shiny office, the one where they signed their papers and plotted against families, was sitting right on land that legally belonged to me. What followed felt like a slow burn nightmare that kept twisting deeper the more I tried to resist, because at first it was just a few polite letters slipped under my door with fancy wall letterheads telling me I needed to join, that my lawn didn't meet their standards, and that my paint color was out of regulation, even though I had never signed any deed covenant with them, never gave consent, and frankly never wanted to. I bought my house fair and square in a quiet little cul-de-sac thinking I'd found peace after years of city noise. But within weeks I realized I had stumbled into a nest of vipers who thought they owned the entire neighborhood, and when I crumpled up their letters and tossed them in the trash, they escalated with more threats, citations that had no legal standing, and then the knock on the door that changed everything. Two men in navy uniforms, badges pinned to their chests, demanding entry because I had allegedly violated community bylaws, and my stomach turned cold when I realized real police don't show up to enforce HOA dues. They flashed something that looked like IDs, but the plastic was cheap, the seal wrong, and when I told them to wait while I called the sheriff, their smug grins vanished and they bolted down the driveway, peeling away in a sedan with no plates, and I knew right then I wasn't just dealing with annoying neighbors but an organized racket. I started digging. Public records, county deeds, incorporation filings, and what I uncovered was stranger than fiction. The HOA was technically registered as a nonprofit, but their office building, a pristine glass-fronted structure 3 blocks away with flags fluttering out front, sat squarely on a parcel my late grandfather had left me years ago, land I'd assumed was just some empty lot after his passing, land I'd paid property taxes on without a second thought, land that I never realized they had quietly squatted on and developed without ever asking permission. It was like the ground shifted beneath me, because suddenly their arrogance made sense. They weren't just pushing me to join. They were desperate to cover up the fact that their very headquarters rested on stolen dirt, and my refusal to sign meant I was one stubborn obstacle away from exposing everything. I tried to go about it calmly. I hired a local attorney, showed him the chain of title, the tax receipts in my name, and within days he confirmed that yes, I legally owned the land under their office, which meant I had the right to demand rent, evict them, or bulldoze the place if I wanted. But before we could file anything, strange things started happening. My mailbox ripped off its post, tire slashes in my driveway, late-night phone calls where silence hissed on the other end until a click ended the line, and then one evening I came home to find my dog locked inside with the back door wide open, whimpering like someone had tried to lure him out but left in a hurry. Fear battled with fury inside me, but I refused to fold, so I marched into one of their HOA meetings, held ironically in the very building they'd stolen. And the air went still when I walked in with my folder of documents. The president, a smug gray-haired man with too much cologne, tried to dismiss me, but I slapped the title deed on the table and told the entire room that they were trespassing on my property, and for the first time their eyes darted nervously instead of looking down at me with that smug superiority. Yet the very next day a certified letter arrived at my door threatening to sue me for defamation if I continued spreading false claims. My lawyer laughed, said we had them cornered, but then he stopped returning my calls, his office number rerouted to voicemail, and when I drove to his office the blinds were drawn and the door locked with a for lease sign on it, as though he had vanished overnight. Paranoia crawled under my skin as I realized how much influence this HOA had, who they knew, how far they'd go to protect their little empire, but I also knew I had the ace up my sleeve. Copies of every deed, every receipt, and now digital backups stored online in case anything happened to me. That was when the real police finally entered the picture, because after the second visit from the fake cops, this time 3 of them, bolder, pounding on my door with threats of arrest, I called the sheriff's department, who arrived minutes later and confirmed what I already knew. Those uniforms weren't issued by the county, those men weren't in the system, and what they had done was felony impersonation. Yet strangely, no arrests were made, and the deputy who took my statement looked almost nervous, as if he knew more than he was saying. Days later I received an anonymous envelope under my door with photos inside, grainy surveillance shots of me grocery shopping, me jogging, me at the gas station, along with a note. Stop before it's too late. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room clutching a baseball bat, wondering how deep this conspiracy ran, until a thought hit me that changed everything. If the HOA's office sat on my land, then every document they produced from inside it, every board meeting, every contract, could be legally invalid, voided by the fact they were operating on stolen property, and if I brought that to light not in the county court where they had influence, but in federal court, I might finally break them. The problem was getting there alive. So I went underground, metaphorically, stopped answering unknown numbers, installed cameras around my house, and quietly worked with a friend from college who now worked as an investigative journalist. She smelled blood the second I told her the story, and together we built a case, piecing through county records, even uncovering that the so-called president of the HOA had once been arrested years ago for fraud in another state under a different name. Just when we were about to publish, the journalist's car was rammed off the road late one night. She survived, barely, but her laptop was stolen from the wreck, all our files gone, or so they thought, because I had already duplicated everything onto cloud drives with automatic sharing to multiple trusted contacts. That was the turning point. I realized they could harass me, threaten me, even try to kill me, but the moment the truth was exposed publicly, their power crumbled, and so I flipped the game. Instead of hiding, I walked right back into their office one morning, held my phone high, and live-streamed the confrontation, telling the world in real time that the HOA's headquarters was built illegally on land I owned, showing the deed and the tax receipts, daring them to deny it while thousands watched online. Their president's face went pale, board members scrambled out of their seats, and within hours the video exploded across social media. Reporters called, lawyers volunteered, and suddenly the same sheriff who once looked nervous was on camera announcing a full investigation. Within weeks the office building was padlocked by court order, the fake cops were identified and charged, and the wall collapsed like a rotten structure eaten through by termites. I wish I could say it ended cleanly, but the scars remain, the paranoia, the nights I still wake up checking the locks. Yet I also found a strange sense of vindication in knowing that standing my ground not only saved my home but exposed a web of corruption far larger than I imagined. So if you ever think you're powerless against the faceless bullies who hide behind fancy titles and fake authority, remember this. Sometimes the very ground they stand on belongs to you, and all it takes is the courage to dig deep enough to prove it.